Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I want to talk about the game plan I have for writing the second draft of my fantasy project. So I've written a first draft, I've let it sit for a little while, I have reread this first draft, taken some notes on the reread, and now the time has come to figure out what I want to do with the revision process. So I've never actually worked on a second draft before. I have written 3 or 4 first drafts. I have yet to continue on with a story to work on a second draft. This is going to be a new process for everybody here, and I know I'm going to be learning a lot about my writing process and the pros and cons of working on a second draft. So if you missed my previous video that was writing related, I reread the first draft of Project Ice, which I will leave linked down below if you want to catch up on the nitty-gritty thoughts and feelings of that project. Today, I want to share how I'm going to be going about these edits. My cat is using the litter box, hang on. Oh my gosh, now he's using the scratching post. Maybe I should just stop recording. Since I have yet to revise and edit a draft, I know that this is a very intimidating process. So I want to try to make this as not so overwhelming as possible, where I am going to slowly start doing revisions. What I think I want to do with the first round of edits with this project, I want to focus on looking at the plot and the characters. So I want to take apart the plot and the subplots I have of this story and see if it makes sense, see how it all goes, where there are plot holes, and answer a lot of the what, where, why, how questions of each part of the plot, and just make sure that the plot of this story actually makes sense. And I want to go back and look at all of my characters. I know I have a lot of characters in this story that are pretty like cookie cutter and are very one-dimensional characters. I want to go back to my characters and start adding a lot of depth to these characters and create more of a backstory for each of these characters, but then what role are they going to be playing in the story? What is their part? What is the significance of this character being in the story? If I feel like they can't have a significance, or if I feel like one character is kind of significant, like I need them for 1 or 2 things that happen in Act 2 and then they don't come back until Act 3, or if I have them in Act 2 and then they disappear and I have a random character come up in Act 3, maybe I can merge those 2 characters. I really want to overanalyze all of the characters I have in the story, see if I can merge anybody, see if anybody needs to be cut, see if a character needs to be added to the story, and if I have a character that needs to be added to the story, I am going to be a little more cautious about it versus just throwing them into the story. This first round of revisions to create draft 2 is going to be a little more picky about adding characters and adding substance to the story, only because I want to make sure I'm starting to fine-tune the story, and if I can convince myself that a character needs to be added or if a plot point needs to be added to the story, then I will absolutely add that to the story. But I really want to be intentional with the edits that I am going to be doing for creating the second draft of this story. For these revisions, I am really going to be focusing on the plot and the characters. The magic system and the world building / the setting are still definitely important to the story. The world and the setting I have for this story, I want it to play a part in quite a lot. I want it to almost be like its own character, and while those things are still very important, like the magic system and connecting that with the characters and the plot and the world, those aren't going to be the main thing I'm going to be focused on with the second draft. Now, if things come up along the way that have to do with the magic system and the world building, then of course I'll explore it and I will start to fine-tune it, but I don't want to focus too much on those things quite yet. They are important to the story. While I'm going through the whole editing process, I will mention those things, and I will probably have to spend some time working on the magic system, world building / setting. That's not going to be the primary focus of getting draft 1 to draft 2. So I've talked about the things that I'm going to be focusing on this revision process to get my story to draft 2, and you're probably asking, am I going to be rewriting the story? And my answer to that is yes, but no. There are certain parts of this story that I won't be rewriting yet. I think eventually, as I continue to rewrite and have multiple drafts of this story, I will eventually have rewritten the whole thing, but I'm not doing a complete full write of draft 2. Again, we're taking this very slow. We're doing intentional steps to get this story to draft 2. Some parts are going to be copy and pasted over because I'm not going to be worrying about those certain sections of the story yet. While there are going to be some parts that are going to have to be rewritten, I plan on expanding this story a little bit for draft 2. So right now the draft is sitting at 63-ish thousand words. So I do plan on adding between 10 and 15,000 words to this draft. This is going to be probably adding a prologue, adding an epilogue, and I do want to slowly start to add more of a backstory for all of the characters and for the world. Now, I know I just said that I'm not going to be focused on the world building, but in order to make sure I establish this plot, I know I need to give a little bit more information. With the second draft, I will be beefing it up and copy and pasting some things over. So it's not going to be a full rewrite. Eventually, the story will be completely rewritten, but that's not going to be what draft 2 is. So I am totally fine with copy and pasting some things over, dialogue, some scenes. I do have some scenes in draft 1 that are more filler. So I'll have a description of what a scene is or what a chapter is, and it's not really explained or I haven't fleshed it out fully. I will go back through and check on those scenes or those chapters that are just kind of bullet pointed and see if I can go ahead and start expanding on those scenes. That is how I plan on doing the edits and the whole drafting portion. But I know Act 1 for this story is pretty short and sweet. I have struggled with getting past an Act 1 in the past, so I tried to be intentional about making this Act 1 short for this project, and then when I go back, which now we're going back to edit, I have plans of expanding on Act 1 and the Act 1 characters and that Act 1, the characters, the setting of that story, and starting to build up the tension and the problems that the characters have with each other. So that's one thing I'll be focusing on with this project, is expanding a little bit in Act 1 and exploring those characters, which I'm pretty excited to do that because there's one of the characters that I want him to play a much larger role in this story, and I think in draft 1 he didn't really play a big role, but he will in the story, and draft 2 is probably going to be his time to shine. With me saying I need to expand on Act 1 and what I want to add for that act, I also think I have come to the realization that this project would be better off told in multiple POVs. I have realized, I think in order to create a more complex cast and to really understand the politics of this world and the magic and the contrast between the characters and what all is really at stake, I think I am hindering this story for it being to its full potential by not making it a multiple POV story. I need to figure out what characters I think would be the best at telling this story, and if you have followed my writing journey, and while I was writing this story originally, I had picked the wrong main character when I first started plotting out this story and figuring out the ideas, and I was brainstorming everything, and I still feel like I haven't quite figured out who the exact main character is of this project. I have it being the queen, but I still feel like something is missing. I'm going to play around with the idea of making this story a multiple POV and see if one of the other characters has a much stronger voice and they'll be the more main character, if that makes sense. And I still feel like I haven't quite found that person. I think with exploring the possibility of making this story multiple POVs and adding that layer, that extra dimension to this story, I really think that that is the right way to go for this project. Who knows, that might be a complete mistake, but only time will tell, and we will only learn yay or nay by testing it out. I have given myself 2 conditions with really concreting the idea of making this multiple POV. The 2 questions I have to ask myself in order for this to happen is, who would be the strongest storyteller than the one I already have that's telling the story? And why does making this multiple POV work more than my original idea of it just being a single perspective. So those are the two kind of like the criteria I have in order for me to change this story to multiple POV. So another little thing that I have for myself is I am allowing myself to copy and paste things over. Like I said, this is not going to be a full rewrite. We're not starting over at 0 words. Whenever I feel like I need to move stuff over from one draft to the next, fully allowed to do that. This might be a little confusing and a little complicated if I'm making this story multiple POV, where it might sound like it's coming from somebody else's voice, but we can worry about fine-tuning voice, how they see the world. We can fix and work all of that stuff out later. So I'm not too concerned about that, but I am aware that that can be an issue by copy and pasting. I am willing to make that sacrifice and to attempt it. I am not giving myself a deadline with working on this, only because I don't know how long it's going to take me to finish the second draft. I know I have a goal of making draft 2 a little bit more readable than draft 1. Even though I got through reading draft 1, it was still a mess. So I want it to be a little more tidy and a little more coherent than draft 1. But really, I'm just excited to test out these waters and to figure out how I'm going to be working on this story. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it is subject to change. Who knows? I might start getting into these edits and realize this game plan isn't going to work for this story. And that might happen, or what I have set for myself might be what I need. But there's going to be no deadline. I am just going to be working at this at a pace that I feel like I can handle right now. So that's everything I have for the game plan for draft 2. Let me know what advice you would have for me if you've ever done revisions on a project, whether it's been, you know, revisions for a second draft, a third draft, a 12th draft. Whatever advice you can give me, I will absolutely take it. And this video can also be helpful to anybody else who has yet to revise a story. We can definitely learn from those who have edited before. That's going to be it for this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Autumn, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.